lot of the comedians in the 70s sort of grew up with drugs, and they used it to sort of help their performing. They had to have a lot of energy, and drugs were a help for that. So it just took a while for them to realize that the short-term high was not worth the long-term problems that that it led to.
Belushi was a comedy icon. Every single time you saw Saturday Night Live, Belushi would do something better and better and better. Every time it was different, and he was one of those roly-poly guys who moved better than a linebacker.
He could come into a room and just light it up. That energy just exuded off of him. You watch the movie Animal House, he probably has 10 lines in the whole movie, but he just steals the movie because of his physicality, and it's just so entertaining to watch.
You guys up for a toga party? Toga! Toga!
John Belushi made being funny rock star status. He was so cool in a rock star kind of way.
Born to Albanian immigrants in 1949, John Belushi was raised in the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant suburb of Wheaton, Illinois.
His grandmother, Nina, who didn't speak English in the house, John found that the way that he could sort of get out of trouble with her and entertain her was by doing physical comedy. She didn't understand what he was saying.
He used to turn his eyelids up at the dinner table while we're eating, trying to get us to laugh a lot.
John is an Albanian kid. He looks different. His hair is kind of wild. So he finds that he can find belonging by making people laugh. And so John becomes a class clown at a very early age.
But he wasn't satisfied being the funniest man in his family. After performing comedy in high school and college, John landed a spot with the famed Second City comedy troupe in nearby Chicago in 1971. 4 years later, a young TV producer named Lorne Michaels cast 26-year-old John in his groundbreaking new sketch comedy series, Saturday Night Live.
I'm sure glad I found you open. You know, most of the places are closed this late.
When John was on stage, you just didn't see anybody else. He always said, attack the stage like a bull, and he always came out like that.
Belushi's definitely an example of that. The extremist personality on stage and off stage. There's often not that much difference. A guy who's that over the top on stage, it has to come out of something.
That something, increasingly, was cocaine. At Saturday Night Live in the 1970s, Belushi found an abundant supply of chemical stimulants to fuel his performances.
Drugs help you stay up all night, and that's typical at Saturday Night Live. They would work all night. Some of the writers and performers virtually made 30 Rock their apartment house and lived there. Also, I think they get a tremendous high from performing in front of a small studio audience that is representing millions of people watching on television. And when they come down from that, it's very painful, I think, for some of them. So one way to keep that high is to take drugs.
John wasn't a stranger to indulgence. I mean, he smoked weed in high school, whatever, a little coke. But once he got to New York, he developed this sense that his persona depended on this manic energy. And there's only so long you can go organically creating this manic energy. So he found ways to keep it going.
After 2 seasons, John's success on SNL propelled him to Hollywood. The lovable frat boy slob Bluto in 1978's hit film Animal House turned him into a movie star.
As Bluto Blutarski, Belushi was incredible. I mean, he was really the embodiment of the spirit of that movie. And the movie was a blockbuster.
John was a very ambitious person who got hit with a tsunami of fame and success that he wasn't really prepared for. On his 30th birthday, he had the #1 late night show on TV, the #1 movie in the country, and he also had the #1 music album on the Billboard charts with the Blues Brothers. I mean, it was just a huge amount of success, and, he just went off the rails.
He would be up for days at a time. There was something about John where he just did not want the party to end.
It was on the set of the 1980 film The Blues Brothers that the 30-year-old comic's cocaine use hit a dangerous new high.
Blues Brothers was when John's problem was really at its worst, and he was having problems on set, and one day John wouldn't come out of his trailer, wouldn't come on set, and John Landis went into the trailer, flushed all the cocaine down the toilet, and said, I'm not going to stand for this anymore.
In the spring of 1980, even Belushi realized that his drug problem was no laughing matter. He hired bodyguard Smokey Wendell, not for protection from attackers, but from drugs.
When John was out on a Saturday night, there was nothing he wanted more than to find drugs, and he'd sneak into the bathrooms, but Smokey was always right there waiting for him.
On his first day, Smokey intercepted a couple grams of cocaine that a dealer was trying to get to him and would follow John around at parties and just, hyper vigilant.
Smokey was keeping John at an arm's length from his addictions until Belushi made a critical error in judgment.
He had been clean for a few months, and he told Smokey that he was clean, he didn't need him anymore.
John was able to stay clean for well over a year. But in the strictest sense of addiction terminology, John wasn't sober, he was just abstinent. He basically subcontracted out his willpower to someone else, which is a short-term solution, but it's not a long-term solution.
After 18 months of sobriety, Belushi released his sixth film, Continental Divide. An attempt to take on more serious material, it was his first critical and commercial failure.
When your life is making people laugh and being accepted, being praised, and then there's a misstep like that, that's a big hit. John didn't really have any experiences like that, really. He had succeeded pretty much every step of the way. So, to cope with that, you turn to what has sustained you in other times. So he started using again.
He gets mixed up with folks that have nothing to do with his life beyond his drug habit, highlighted by his heroin use. These are just unsavory characters from the outside, and doing nothing for him but getting him high.
His drug use escalating, his career in decline. In March 1982, John was in Los Angeles working on a screenplay, but the work took a back seat to his vices.
He met this woman, Kathy Smith, who was a drug dealer, and they just holed up at the Chateau Marmont for a few days. People came by, Robin Williams showed up, and Robin Williams wasn't involved in the drug use in any way. He just came by, saw that John was there with this rather scary woman and said, I'm gonna go. Robert De Niro stopped by the Chateau that night.
Kathy was half groupie, half dealer to the stars. She helped give John a speedball.
A speedball is an injected mixture of heroin and cocaine. On the morning of March 5th, John's personal trainer, Bill Wallace, paid him a visit in bungalow number 3 of the Chateau Marmont Hotel.
His personal trainer showed up to bring him a typewriter because he wanted a typewriter to work on some stuff, and he walked in and he found John on the bed. And he hopped on him and tried to give him CPR, and he was just already gone.
At age 33, John Belushi was dead. The official cause of death was a drug overdose administered by his companion and drug connection, Kathy Smith.
I think for John Belushi, there was almost a perfect storm of personality inertia that contributed to his early death. It was a very vicious cycle of addiction. Because he has this crazy work ethic, he knows that he needs to be on all the time, and he's really thought that the drugs are what makes his work really spin.
For the comedy world, Belushi's death was a warning.
It was one of those wake-ups. You go, whew. It's just sad and it makes you sick, and then everybody was doing the same thing at the same time. And here's this guy dead, and anybody could have died then. And it was a real wake-up call for me.
He was a pure professional, and he was very serious about being taken seriously at the business of comedy. But he couldn't function in the world without drugs, and he wanted to be the center of attraction all the time, and he needed to be high to do that.
Here they are. All my friends. This is a not ready for primetime cemetery.
There's this short film that aired on one of the SNLs in which Belushi played an old man, and he was in a cemetery. He was walking through, and the graves were all of his cast members. And he had outlived them all, and he danced on some of them. And it was this kind of ghostly looking thing. It seemed kind of otherworldly. And it was funny and poignant at the time. And there's a lot more poignancy now.
They all thought I'd be the first to go. I was one of those live fast, die young, leave a good-looking corpse types, you know? Well, I guess they were wrong.